Good afternoon and welcome to the Rundown. I am your host, Captivating Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, the 31st of December. Georgia's poll closures limit Black and Latino voting in the Senate runoff race. However, early voting turnout is surging across the state, but not in Hall County, where officials say half of the number of polling locations have been closed. And a Black man who was wrongfully detained by a maskless officer has tested positive for COVID-19 just days after the incident. And 2 more officers who are involved in Breonna Taylor's raid case have been set to be fired. And Anjanette Young cancels her meeting with Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot, citing procedural disagreements. Bill Cosby thanks Jesse Jackson for calling his release from prison due to COVID-19 threat. And a Virginia judge won't try a Black man in a courtroom with white portraits. Judge David Bernhard is concerned that the portraits might suggest that the courtroom is a place historically administered by whites for whites. And SoHo Karen, who falsely accused a Black teen of phone theft, claims, "That's not who I am." Let's get to the news. Voting rights groups on Wednesday denounced election officials in Halls County, Georgia for opening fewer early voting sites, which the group says limited turnout for Black and Latino voters during this crucial January runoff election that would determine the control of the U.S. Senate. The January 5th contest pits Republican Senator David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler against Democratic challengers Jon Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock. Georgia has seen massive turnout since early voting began. More than 1.4 million ballots have been cast over the first week that the polls were open. However, that surge has not taken place in places like Halls County, where the turnout has only been about 13% as of Tuesday, which is far lower than statewide figures. Officials say that the reason why Halls County turnout is low in the runoff is because Halls County cut early voting locations. Similar polling places reductions have occurred in some other Georgia counties. Voting groups have spent weeks urging election officials in Cobbs County, a major Atlanta suburb, to expand early voting access after it reduced the number of locations from 11 for the November election to just 5 for the runoff. The New Georgia Project, whose efforts to register and turn out young and minority voters to help expand Georgia's electorate and shift the state's political landscape over the last decade, also sued 4 other counties earlier this month. Cobb County is home of more than 750,000 people and is nearly 30% Black and 13% Latino. Halls County is a population of about 240,000 residents, and 8% are Black and nearly 30% are Latino. A Black man who was wrongfully detained by a maskless officer on December 19th has tested positive for the coronavirus, according to ABC News. The video footage of the incident shows the officer, without any kind of face covering, approach Jamal McKee while he was eating with his family in a mall food court. The officer then put him in handcuffs and led him outside, despite McKee and his fiance's consistently telling the officer that they had the wrong man. McKee reportedly matched a description of a suspect wanted for credit card fraud. McKee had a mask on throughout the incident, but it was down, exposing his mouth and nose as he was in mid-meal when the officer approached him. 5 days later, Christmas Eve, McKee received a positive COVID-19 diagnosis. He is currently in quarantine and has experienced mild symptoms. The Virginia Beach Police Department chief has apologized for the occurrence on December 21st, saying that the officer broke protocol by not being masked. The New York Times is reporting that Cosgrove and Jaynes both received notices of termination from the Louisville Metro Police Department on Tuesday. Cosgrove fired the fatal shot that killed Taylor, according to an FBI ballistic report, and Jaynes, who did not actually participate in the raid, had obtained the search warrant, however, and Jaynes swore in an affidavit that he personally verified that the postal inspector that Taylor's former boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover, who was the target of the drug investigation, had been receiving packages at Taylor's home, according to ABC News. The Louisville Metro Police Department interim chief wrote that Jaynes' notice of termination that he lied when he swore he had spoke to a postal inspector. Detective Jaynes did not contact with a U.S. postal inspector. He received the information from a Sergeant Matterly, who got it from another police officer. The more and more I hear this story of Breonna Taylor and more details actually come out, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I've said it tons and tons of times, that this was a botched robbery, that their whole intention was to rob this so-called big-time drug dealer, that they were under the impression that he had a lot of money and drugs stashed in Breonna Taylor's apartment from the investigation or the botchy investigations that they were doing, or undercover surveillance that they were doing, in order to gain access to this woman's apartment, which they believed had drugs and money hidden there, due to them listening either to phone conversations or text messages or anything, corresponding letters, whatever it was. They thought that they were going in to win the lottery, and it didn't happen that way, and they've been trying to cover up their tracks ever since, and it has not worked, because whatever is done in the dark will eventually come to light. And when it does finally come out that it actually was a robbery of some sort, because they were looking for money and drugs that they thought that young man had hid in Breonna Taylor's apartment, I'm not going to say I told you so, just say, oh, I called it. That's it. But anyway, on to the next story. In this updated story, just yesterday, Anjanette Young had agreed to have a meeting with Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot as a public forum to discuss the city's handling of her case in an effort to provide transparency and accountability. Young and her lawyer and the mayor and the police superintendent had selected Chicago's aldermen and members of the media to all be in attendance. However, those plans have been scrapped. It's quite unclear why these plans have been scrapped. Mayor Lightfoot said that the plans violated the Open Meeting Act, and it would coincide with the coronavirus pandemic restrictions. However, the lawyer for Ms. Young has said that they canceled both meetings with the mayor, the public forum and a private meeting, and said that a simple apology would not suffice. In the aftermath of the raid, several actions have been taken. Chicago's top attorney and former federal judges were brought in by the mayor to take an outside look into the city's handling of Young's case, and the 12 officers were placed on administrative duty with the Civilian Office of Police, and NAACP itself is also conducting an investigation of their own. I'm sure this is a situation that Mayor Lori Lightfoot wish would go away, but the true reality of this problem is that your officers acted egregiously. They violated that woman's rights. They did not protect her in any way. They still treated her like a criminal as she stood there naked asking for clothes. And even when they did clothe her, they still handcuffed her. So the whole procedure was wrong. Not even to mention that they were in the wrong place. So the whole thing was wrong. And of course, you don't want to take responsibility because of all of the attention brought on to not only the department, but you at this point. So you're trying anything to kind of wiggle your way out of it, but you won't. That woman deserves every bit of respect, and if she doesn't want to talk to you right now, or if any situation does not feel right to her and she declines to talk to you, she has every right to, because nobody gave her any consideration when they raided her home, nor did they give her any consideration when they continued to stand there, all 12 of those men, and she stood there with no clothes on until at least one officer tried to grab something to cover her up. Yeah. Bill Cosby, who was convicted in April of 2018 on 3 counts of aggravated sexual assault from his former friend back in 2004, is serving a 3 to 10 year sentence in a Pennsylvania state prison. Bill Cosby expressed gratitude to Reverend Jesse Jackson, who called for Cosby's release from prison amidst the coronavirus pandemic in a new interview. He's known Cosby for 50 years and has seen the comedian help so many people, citing donation Bill and Camille Cosby have given to HBCUs and other organizations. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has heard conflicting arguments earlier this month in a virtual hearing about whether Bill Cosby is fairly convicted of sexual crimes in 2018. But many of the 7 justices seem doubtful that the prosecution's assertion. The High Court heard arguments from Cosby's appeal lawyer and from 2 prosecutors of the office from the district attorney. Well, I don't see the big hoopla in releasing him. I think if you're going to release all those other corrupt politicians and other criminals that were charged with other crimes like lying to the government or lying to the FBI or Congress and so on and so forth, if you can release them from jail due to COVID-19 restrictions, why couldn't you release Bill Cosby? It makes no sense to me. Obviously, there's a different kind of agenda here that if you support him and you're willing to do his dirty deeds or continue his dirty whatever he's got going on, he will pardon you if you happen to get in trouble. But if not, then there's no need for a pardon. I mean, the man is 80-something years old. Whatever thing he'd done, I'm sure by now he has totally understood the consequences of his actions. I mean, if you let a woman who was around his age kind of end her golden life being a free woman after she herself admitted to lying on Emmett Till, which caused his death, and she turned around and towards the end of her life wanted to say, well, yeah, I lied, and we let that go, then you should be able to at least let this man live out the rest of his life in freedom, even if it happens to be at the extent of the coronavirus. And be sure to join Jay Wilson, Rebel Sun, The Official King Payne, Conscious TV, and Captivating Christian this and every Thursday at 6:45 Central Standard Time, 7:45 Eastern Standard Time for the Gentleman's Panel, where we are not afraid to go there and discuss an array of topics. See you there. In the upcoming trial of Terrence Shipp on charges of eluding the police will be held in a courtroom that has no portraits on the wall, says the Fairfax County Circuit Court Judge David Bernhard. Bernhard noted that his usual courtroom has no portraits, but juror trials that were postponed during the coronavirus pandemic are now being held in larger courtrooms. The walls of those rooms are lined with portraits of retired judges who are overwhelmingly white. Public defender raised a question about the issue in a motion titled "Motion to Remove Portraits," overwhelmingly depicting white jurists hanging in the trial rooms. Judge David Bernhard has said that 45 of the 47 portraits hanging in the courtrooms are of white jurists. Prosecutors offered no objection to the request, Bernhard said in his ruling. Shipp's trial is scheduled for January 4th. Bernhard's ruling does not affect whether other judges in the court will take the judicial portraits into account. Earlier this year, a judge ordered a portrait of a Confederate General Robert E. Lee to be removed from a courtroom. Hey, this is Captivating Christian here to remind you to tune in to Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And the woman filmed in a viral video accusing Grammy-winning jazz musician Keenan Harold's son of stealing her iPhone has doubled down on her actions, claiming that she was actually assaulted. The 22-year-old woman from Staten Island, who had checked out days earlier, tackled the teen in the lobby trying to search his pockets for her cell phone that she later found in an Uber. The woman claims that the video didn't reflect who she was. I actually try very hard to make sure that I'm always doing the right thing, but she pressed for evidence that she was assaulted. She stopped answering CNN's calls And the NYPD said that they considering charging her with assault and grand larceny or attempted robbery. I think a lot of these charges, a lot of these Karens or Kevins, whatever kind of situations you want to call them, where people want to accuse people of stealing or being in places where they're not supposed to be and or assaulting them. All of these will stop when you start charging the people actually making these false accusations with criminal charges and having them either pay fines or do jail time. Then it'll stop, because they wouldn't want to be put in jail or be in that position where in which their rights get taken away. So when you start to almost give the accuser a bit of their own medicine, especially when it's false, I think that's probably the only remedy that would rectify a lot of these situations. But again, I'm not surprised that she would then turn around and call herself the victim after she victimized a child, because she should be charged with reckless endangerment, something to a child, because he is in fact a child. So you giving her attempted robbery and grand larceny, something that, a lawyer can talk out of, but assault on a child or child endangerment, that's something you can't really talk out, because the evidence is very clear that she attacked that boy. So we'll see how this goes. Once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.